Hey everybody, welcome back to History Student Reacts. Today we'll be watching my favorite piece of Arabic history by Historically. Now I've enjoyed a couple of Historically videos lately. This one was recommended by one of our wonderful viewers. I don't know what this is going to be about. I've been told we'll be talking, I believe, about the Umayyad and perhaps Abbasid Caliphate. So not the earliest days of the Caliphate, but relatively early-ish, perhaps. I'm excited to get into this one. If you guys end up enjoying this one, I'd appreciate it if you leave a like on the video, subscribe to my channel, and check out my Patreon, which is linked down below. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's jump right into this reaction.
This video is made possible by War Thunder. Click the link in the description to claim your massive bonus pack and to get started.
Whoa.
A while ago, I was researching the longest war ever in history, which spanned more than 700 years and is called the Reconquista, a massive war between invading Muslims and Christians on who got to own the Iberian Peninsula. But while researching that massive war, I came across a smaller specific story that honestly felt like it came straight from a movie, almost like an alternative Lord of the Rings story. A story about a prince with a dream and a mission to revive his slain dynasty. But before I introduce you to that main character in this wild story, allow me to explain the state of the European and Islamic world around the year 700, so that we are all on the same page.
Yes, let's situate ourselves. I now know roughly when we're talking about. I gotta say, the story he's described sounds very compelling, so I'm excited to get into it. But let's do a broad overview of these regions we're looking at.
And I'll start with 0. Or actually, I'll start with the intro. Give me 5 seconds.
Okay.
Historically Facts, Part 7. Around the year 0, Jesus Christ was born within the Roman Empire.
Yeah, we really went back, huh? Back to the Romans, back to Jesus.
In Bethlehem. Romans did a bad thing and welcomed Christianity into the world. Another thing that Romans were bad at is keeping barbarians from their soil. And the glorious Roman...
They were pretty good at that for a long time, but yeah, they got pretty bad at it near the end of at least the Western Empire. Of course, the East survived for a long time after that.
Roman Empire turned in a span of 80 years into half of its original size, with only the Eastern Roman
less than half, probably.
Empire continuing its memories. Around that time, in the year 570, Prophet Muhammad was born in the city of Mecca and spent his life preaching the word of Allah and uniting the Arabian Peninsula till his passing in 632 AD. With Prophet Muhammad passed on, the 4 caliphs, also known as the closest companions of his, started the Rashidun Caliphate and quickly expanded the caliphate's borders into the Eastern Roman Empire, the Persian Empire, and African territories.
Yep, you've got your Rashidun Caliphate, which extremely rapidly manages to expand really in every direction out of Arabia. It manages to take on the Romans and the Persians. The Romans, of course, survived this and will survive until the 1400s when they fall to the Ottomans. The Persians, on the other hand, they will not survive this. At least the Persian Empire will not. Of course, the Persians themselves will remain within the Caliphate, but their empire will shortly fall.
How did they manage to defeat 2 great empires at the same time? Well, the Persians and self-proclaimed Romans had been fighting for centuries because of disputed territory, weakening both sides massively, which was beneficial for the rapidly approaching fresh Arab Empire.
Yeah, and I'll say this, I've gotten comments on this, and I really am not an expert on the topic, so I can't tell you what's true and what isn't. You can do your own reading if it interests you. What I've heard before, and what they just repeated there, is that because the Romans and the Persians were locked into this war, right, where they almost crushed each other, and that is true, the Romans and the Persians weakened each other tremendously. That is true. What I've heard is that that allowed the Caliphate to expand even more quickly through their territory. Now, that's not the only reason that the Caliphate was able to expand. It was an extremely impressive expansion in its own right. But what some people have said is that that is more an older historical myth with the intent of sort of, you could say, reducing how impressive that initial expansion was. Saying, well, no, it's just because these 2 great powers were weakened. So I don't necessarily know what the truth is. I'm not deep in the literature on this one. right? It had always seemed to me that the Persians and the Romans really had weakened each other from fighting. They had really fought each other. They'd pummeled each other into the ground. It made sense to me that that would allow an opening for the caliphate. And I don't think that diminishes the accomplishments of those early conquests. That's not how I see it, though. I might caution you against seeing any type of conquest as an accomplishment, but that's a different topic entirely. But yeah, I would say that's something, if you're interested in that, you might want to read more into yourself. It's definitely not my area of expertise at all.
Then, internal struggles. Prophet Muhammad never clearly told his followers who would follow his footsteps as the leader in the Islamic world, which left them with 4 candidates, also known as the caliphs, who I introduced before. It was quickly decided that those 3 were to be caliph first, and finally Ali as the 4th. This from the start caused a split within the Islamic world, and created the Shia and Sunni movement, where the Shia argued that Ali should have been the first caliph, and not the 4th one like the Sunni Muslims argue. During the reign of the 3rd caliph named Uthman, unrest was growing and growing, to the point where rebels broke
into... And I've said this before, but, that initial Shia-Sunni split, as you can see, it's essentially, in some ways, a political split over leadership. Of course, there's a religious element to it. Initially, more of a political split that becomes this intense religious split over time, which in many ways is what it is today.
The 3rd caliph, named Uthman, unrest was growing and growing, to the point where rebels broke into Uthman's home and killed him while he was reading the Quran. This sparked outrage all across the empire and ignited the first Islamic civil war, and the 4th caliph Ali in the role to fix it. Long story short, Ali got assassinated, and the head of the Umayyad family, which were devout Sunnis and a powerful family, became the 5th caliph and started the Umayyad Caliphate. Alright, cool, we are now getting close to the start of a story, so just bear with me just a little bit longer.
Okay.
The Umayyad Caliphate got bigger and more powerful as the years went on, to the point where they spread from India all the way to the bottom of France.
I mean, look at that, that's crazy. All the way from India to Iberia and the south of France. I mean, that is an extremely powerful empire spanning an exceptional distance. Shows you how powerful the caliphate had become. And as you can imagine, all that territory came with a lot of wealth and prosperity, ushering in, at this time, especially as we move forward into the Abbasid Caliphate, a real golden age of education and culture and prosperity and all these fantastic things.
It was a marvelous empire. At least, if you were a prestigious Arab, that is. Any other minority got treatments and taxes that were blatantly unfair. Huh? But aren't all these guys Arab, says the clueless American and European? Well, not exactly.
No.
This part is Arab. That part is Persian. The people whose empire was defeated by the Arabs.
And I'll try not to be a clueless American, right? What I'll say is, first of all, in the Levant, there's an incredible mix of different peoples. You will find an incredible diversity of different religions and ethnicities within this region particularly, but throughout the empire. You could imagine this is a conquering empire, and where they go, they encounter a lot of different peoples, a lot of different ethnicities and religions, and though the territory of the caliphate will convert to Islam over time, that was not immediate. So you will still see a lot of different religions throughout the empire. Right here, where the Persian Empire was, at this time, you still have a lot of Zoroastrians. That was the sort of main Persian religion before Islam. And of course, you have a lot of ethnic Persians there, right? And so you've got an incredible diversity throughout the empire. And of course, though, the idea is that when people convert to Islam, that you'll all be brothers and sisters under Islam, you'll all be equal. That's not really what happens. There are still divisions ethnically, there are still social splits, and so some of these non-Arab Muslims, they either convert, or some of them are even born as Muslims as time continues. They find that they're not being treated equally to their Arab brothers and sisters. And so they're saying, what is happening here? This isn't how it's supposed to work, and they grow increasingly frustrated.
They were mainly Shia Muslims and felt a strong affinity with the assassinated Caliph Ali. And you might have guessed it, the combination of unfair treatment plus religious differences caused these suppressed groups to come together as the Abbasid movement.
Yeah.
And they were ready for a revolution.
And I do think the religious split took a while to take root. Shia Islam. You sort of see this split becoming more and more prominent as the years continue. But of course, when you look at the Middle East today, who is the most prominent Shia power? It's Iran or Persia, you could call it that. And so that sort of holds true today.
A bloody revolution, that is. The Umayyad Caliph, Marwan II, could feel the rain coming, and rallied up his troops and headed to battle to face off the Abbasid army. However, the Umayyad soldiers were no match for the Abbasid armies, who were fueled with a strong passion for justice for every civilian in the Great Empire. Almost all the Umayyad soldiers, including the Caliph Marwan II, ended up being killed.
Damn.
But the Abbasids weren't done there. They wanted to bring justice to all the remaining family members of the Umayyad family. And back in the 750s, justice came in the form of death. Remember that scene from Star Wars where they issued Order 66? This was exactly the same. Rogue Abbasids agents all across the Caliphate started systematically killing every single member, servant and loyalist of the Umayyad family. And with the Abbasid army marching closer and closer to the city of Damascus, the capital of the Umayyad Caliphate, unrest and the slaughter of the Umayyad family was in full force. And here we find the protagonist of our story, Prince Abdullah Rahman. Or as his full name and title goes, Emir Abdullah Rahman ibn Muawiyah ibn Hisham. Emir means prince, Abdullah Rahman is his name, which means servant of God, Ibn means son of, and Muawiyah is his father, and Hisham his grandfather.
We have very different cultures have different ways of naming, right? So in most English-speaking cultures, we name very differently than this. But I always found this style very interesting because then through somebody's name, you can tell a lot about them. Or you have this, say, in Russia, where you have patronyms, where your name might tell you, you are the son of, a Victor or whatever, right? So different cultures have similar things where through somebody's name, you can actually tell something about maybe their family or their position or whatever.
But
I will say, even a lot of English names, we don't use them this way today, but a lot of English names initially told you something, right? Someone's last name might come from their profession, like the name Cooper. A lot of people are named Cooper today, a first name, a last name. If someone's named Cooper, it doesn't mean anything now, but back in the day, a family with the last name Cooper might have been because they were actually Coopers. You know what I mean?
Means son of, and Muawiyah is his father, and Hisham his grandfather. But for simplicity's sake, we are just going to call him Prince Abdullah Rahman. Despite being a 20-year-old prince, he wasn't in line for the throne. But that didn't make any difference for the Abbasids. Every person Umayyad had to be game-ended. And
interesting. Well, it'll be good to see this from the sort of Umayyad perspective because, typically I'm thinking about the Abbasids, I'm thinking about how great and glorious their empire was. Perhaps, I think it has a good claim on being the greatest Muslim empire of all time, perhaps competing with the Ottomans and some others. And so now we get to see the Umayyad perspective here. And of course, things were not so great for them at this point.
With Abbasid assassins getting ever so closer, Abdullah Rahman knew fighting wasn't an option. It was time to run.
Escape from Damascus. Ha ha. This is cool.
With swords clashing in the hallway, time was of the essence. First things first, the group had to decide where to flee to. Looking at the map, Yahya, the brother of Abdullah Rahman, suggested it made sense to try to outdistance the Abbasids as far as possible, meaning to head westwards towards Palestine. However, Badr, a freed slaveman and close loyalist of the prince, argued against it, and suggested they should avoid major roads and cities and to follow the Euphrates River up instead, potentially finding support and shelter along their way. Abdullah Rahman agreed, but that wasn't the only problem they had to tackle. How were they going to escape the city without getting detected? Sure, they could just try their luck and run, but that would mean that he had to leave his 4-year-old son and his sisters behind, something that the prince wouldn't dare to think about. Badr, once again, being experienced in a simpler lifestyle, came to the rescue. Disguises. Ditch the luxuries and bulking weapons. Cover your faces and only grab what is necessary. Leave the city as merchants. The group agreed and exited through the back door onto the streets of chaos. With bodies everywhere and unnecessary bloodshed tainting the streets of the fallen capital, the group set off and managed to slip the way out of the grasp of the Abbasid's wrath.
Wow.
For now.
Uh-oh. Evil man.
Gather the horses. We are going on a hunt.
Uh-oh.
Ah, shucks. Line. But first, we need to talk about the sponsor.
Okay.
But first, we need to talk about the sponsor. That's right. It's Thundering for War, because War Thunder sponsored us. Yeah. War Thunder.
Oh, man. I've got Historically's video linked down below, so you can go and check it out if you're interested. And please do. Please go give him a like, subscribe. We want to show YouTube creators support for making these fantastic videos that we like to watch and react to. Also, I gotta say, and I think I said this in another video recently, War Thunder has been keeping YouTubers paid for a while. Like, goddamn, they're shelling out the cash money for these YouTube ads. Hey, keep it coming.
Individual components. Blowing up enemies has never felt this satisfying before. If you want to try it out, use my link in the description to get 3 premium vehicles, a 50% experience and income booster, 2 vehicles to rent, 100,000 silver, and 7 days of premium. This offer is only available for a limited time though, and only for those who are new or haven't played for 6 months. With Damascus behind them, the group was far from safe. The Abbasids, now in control of the capital and the Caliphate, renamed the empire to the Abbasid Caliphate, which all but the western provinces around Spain and Morocco complied with.
And keep an eye on those western provinces.
There was no more going back to the realm and luxury that the 2 princes were a part of. At the time, the group didn't know it yet, but they were the last remaining Umayyad blood alive in the entire Caliphate. Everyone else had been murdered. The group, exhausted...
I will say, I think I can see where this story is going, because he started this by talking about Iberia. We see that Iberia and sort of that western chunk of Africa were the only regions not, following the sort of Abbasid revolution. We see the last of the Umayyad bloodline. Basically, things are heading westward, I'll put it that way.
Both mentally and physically, arrived late that day in a small village to rest up and prepare for the final stretch towards the river. The townsfolk, seemingly sympathizing with the prince and its cause, offered them a couple simple but warm tents for them to rest in. At last, after a traumatizing day, the group could finally close their eyes and sleep. But not for long.
Uh-oh. God, this is like Assassin's Creed, man.
My lord, they found us.
No, stay back, Gordon! Ah!
Wake my brother. I need to find my son. Oh no.
Jesus.
No, my lord. If we die here, the bloodline dies with us. We have to go. And with pain in their hearts and no other choice, the trio left the village, leaving the rest of the group to its fate.
Not good. This is like, since we're using the Fellowship Lord of the Rings comparisons, this is like when the hobbits first meet Aragorn, and you have the ring wraiths come in and stab the pillows because they've hid. Except they did not manage to hide our friends here in this video. Looks like most of his family was killed in this raid. Chapter 2, Rock Bottom. Yeah, greatly reduced fellowship.
Just to clarify, each one of the left behind family members got killed that night by the Abbasid hunters. Gosh, these Abbasids really are horrible, aren't they? Well, if you're an Umayyad, yeah, but for the rest of the people, they really weren't that bad.
I was gonna say, I talked about earlier how we were seeing this from the Umayyad perspective, and how, usually when I think of the Abbasids, I think of this great empire. To be honest, I know this is brutal, and I wouldn't justify this type of behavior, but frankly, this is sort of court politics of the era. You can look at any empire at this time, or really throughout history, and what you find is that when a new dynasty or a new family comes into power, what do? Well, they usually root out members of the previous dynasty, and either perhaps will ally with them, but more often than not will try to kill them. In some examples, you can look at the Ottomans, for instance. When you get in a position of power, sultan or king in different examples, people will even kill their own family members, their own siblings, right? So extremely brutal, like we're seeing here, but not atypical. In fact, pretty normal politics of the time, frankly, dynastic politics.
As a matter of fact, the Islamic Golden Age happened in the Abbasid Empire. So thank you, Abba. Very cool. For killing my son. And 3 sisters. If we take a look at the magically updated map, we can tell that the situation is worse than I thought it was. Damascus has completely fallen, and the Abbasid armies are spreading out and taking down the remaining rogue soldiers.
Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't quite obvious to Abdullah Rahman in this moment that everything really had been totally lost. His dynasty, his family's dynasty, their caliphate was over. It was now time for the Abbasid Caliphate, and it would be the Abbasid Caliphate for years and years to follow. That probably was not obvious, but I'm sure it was obvious that things weren't going well for him and his family.
You might be thinking, why don't they just hop over into the Eastern Roman Empire and look for shelter there? Well, remember when the Arabs took half of their already halved empire? Yeah, they still didn't forget about that one.
Yeah.
Speaking of forgetting something...
They were not really homies at this time, the Eastern Romans, and, really any member of any dynasty from the Caliphate.
It seems like the Abbasid hunters are here to finish the job. With nowhere else to go, the trio made a desperate run for the river and threw themselves into the water.
Jeez.
The Abbasid hunters wore heavy clothing and armor and were on horses, thus in no shape for crossing a river. But neither was Yahya. Abdullah Rahman was always an athletic type, and better being a freed slave, naturally is used to do demanding physical tasks. But Yahya was more emir than swimmer. The three desperately started to swim to the other side. But the deeper into the crossing they went, the stronger the current. If only I could just not cross or something. If you come back, we promise we won't kill you. Alright, that's it. I'm going back.
Bruh.
What are you doing, brother? Hurry, we can't go back. Just last night, they
Bro, that cannot be worth it.
killed our sisters and my son. You can't trust them. Bro, relax. They promised. Surely they wouldn't break that. Oh.
You really think that wasn't going to happen? I just talked about dynastic politics of the time. No mercy, my friend, no mercy. This is why it's important that you're a strong swimmer. Well, I think there's other reasons than this. But, hey, being a strong swimmer, you can see how important it is here.
What a dumbass. You reckon it would work again? Doesn't hurt to try. Hey, I know we just killed your brother and all that, but if you come back, we won't kill you. And so, Abdullah Rahman swam back, became best friends with the murderer of his entire bloodline, and the Arab countries would never be in another war ever again.
That's right.
Is what the prince wished he could believe, but better going far beyond the pay grade, pulled them away from the river, and the two of them ran like their
Yeah,
life.
good job, Better. Can't believe both of these idiots wanted to cross back over.
Dependent on it. Which it did. The two kept running and running, till there was no more land to run on. I guess this is it, huh? Is it though? Better. I am the last one of the Umayyad clan. Everyone else is dead. They count on me better. I can't just give up and accept my fate or hide in exile.
Yeah, this is... I know we've got part 2, but this is going to be a pretty cool story because there are many examples of people who had their dynasties destroyed, their families killed, and who just went into exile, fled. as you do when something like that happens. This is an example of someone who he didn't manage to regain control of the empire, but he certainly made something of himself. He was not done after all of this.
For Allah's sake, what do you think my son would say if he saw me surrender? Why do you imagine me as a little baby? Probably nothing good. Listen, as much as I want to cry and weep in a hole, which, believe me, I really do, I still can't. At least, not till we have delivered justice. Here, give me your map. 40 years ago, my great-grandfather, Al-Walid I, led a massive invasion on Al-Andalus and conquered almost everything of the peninsula. If there's one place we can go to for support, it has to be there.
Yep.
I heard the local governor there has been trying to establish his own rule in defiance of the Umayyad family, which means it's very likely he also won't give in to the Abbasids. We cross through Africa, rally up an army, defeat the governor, and conquer back our empire that the Abbasids have taken from us. It will be a long and treacherous journey. The Abbasid horsemen and Mr. Scarface won't stop till we escape their lands. Not to mention the many Berber tribes we will come across, and we will be anything but friendly. Better we freed you from slavery, and your debt has been more than repaid. If you want to leave, I understand. I will never leave you, Mr. Frodo. Thanks, Sam.
Bro, I was literally just thinking, he's got his Samwise. My mind's on Lord of the Rings now. That's funny.
Alright then, let's rest our legs and dig in for another night.
Shout out,
As tomorrow, we start our quest to defeat the governor and declare war on the Abbasid Empire.
Part 2 before oversimplified uploads. That's funny. That was a good one. I really enjoyed that video. A really good setup for... Is it a whole series or are there only 2 parts? I think there are only 2 parts. So I guess there's a lot to cover next time. I mean, they laid it out pretty well in this one. Set it up well. I'm excited to get to part 2. Yeah, I think this will be a fascinating story. Given that it's already a topic I'm interested in, and now we get it narrated in this sort of fun way. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this one, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave a like, subscribe, and check out my Patreon, which is linked down below. With all of that, I hope you guys are having a fantastic day today, and I will see you all again next time. Goodbye.